And, of course, this hour, we flip the switch and we'll take your phone calls. Marshall Masters, our guest, as we talk about Nibiru, Planet X. And welcome back with Marshall Masters and your phone calls as well. Marshall, so you believe some will make it, some will not. How severe will that be?
Well, it's going to be pretty severe. You know, there was a book came out by a fellow named Forsyth called 1 Second After.
Yes, we know him. William Forstchen.
Yep. And at the end of that book, you know, the scenario is the United States is attacked with 2 EMP weapons on medium-sized ballistic missiles. And at the end of the book, what they find is that just that level of attack kills off 90% of all Americans.
That's right, over a year, which is still pretty darn bad.
That's right. So, you know, it's not unrealistic to say, you're going to have the same kind of death toll. You know, the Georgia Guidestones tell us to keep the population under 500 million. Doesn't say how we get there.
For the entire planet.
Yeah. So there's going to be a major loss of life. You know, the thing is that the vast majority of humanity lives along the coastlines. And unfortunately, they're going to be led into believing that the smart thing to do is to survive in place. And, well, a lot of them are going to perish as a result of that. That's where the heaviest death toll is going to take place. And then there's going to be all different kinds of reasons. Disease is going to be awful. Starvation, you know, war, any number of factors. But this is going to be a global tribulation. And, yes, it's going to be a difficult time. But on the other hand, it is going to break us out of slavery as a species. We're going to die in vast numbers, but we're going to be dying as free men and women. And the question is are we going to go back into slavery, or are we going to claim our heritage? God does not want us to be slaves. God wants us to be free, because when we're free, we're able to get even closer to God.
Tell me about your 3-part audiobook series, Two Suns in the Sky.
Two Suns in the Sky is something that I did to really help the people who are in awareness, and so that they can deal with things. There's a lot of takeaway information. Folks that are in awareness, George, tend to have big hearts and small wallets. And a lot of them have been in awareness since they were children. They're typically baby boomers. And what I'm in that, one of the takeaways is I'm telling them how, you know, you need to go find people to align yourself with. There's going to come a point where folks, there are going to be people, this will be a minority, who go, this is existential. We're facing a clear and present danger. And what you're looking for are faith-based leaders who are looking up at the sky, and they're not getting bowled over by the propaganda they're going to hear on the fake news channels. They're going to say, I got to get my flock to safety.
Wouldn't you think Donald Trump's the kind of guy to say, this is happening, folks? You know, that's a hard thing to say.
Is he even aware of this? Oh, I think he's very, very well aware of it. I think he's well read on it. He understands it very well. But, you know, is he going to be forthcoming like that? You know, one of the things that he did, one of the first things he did was he made an FCC chair appointment. And this FCC chair right now is trying to eliminate net neutrality, which is going to result in a fast lane for the good old boys, a slow lane for the folks that they want to bleed, and then a no lane for everybody else. So if Trump is sitting there and he's trying to destroy net neutrality, you know, I don't see any reason why he would be honest about Planet X with us, to be honest.
Let's take some calls here for you. Let's go to Ginny in Slidell, Louisiana, to get things started. Hi, Ginny.
Oh, Gina.
Gina.
Yes.
Well, great. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. My question is for your guest, Marshall. You said earlier that Nibiru is feeding gold from planet Earth for resources to replenish their planet. do you think that maybe instead of our government depopulizing for cloud seeding, they're maybe looking for something in the same sense to replenish our planet? And or why haven't we tried gold?
Well, because we know that the Anunnaki are going to come and take it. So we're using aluminum instead of gold. And they use the gold principally because they have to deal with radiation shielding, whereas we're dealing with, the increasing luminosity of the sun. Back in 1999, I was studying this because I really wanted to get into global warming because I'd seen the effect of it on the pole for years, flying back and forth to Russia in the winter. And what we determined then was that global warming is real, but it's principally driven by solar luminosity. The sun's getting steadily brighter. Well, when we came out and published those findings, I had just started Yowza. And oh my God, was I lambasted and ridiculed. It was awful. It was just awful. So I withdrew the article, but yet in 2004, Max Planck Institute came out and said exactly the same thing. It's this growing trend of solar luminosity. So if you get into the chemtrailing thing, and I would really suggest Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, he does a brilliant job, and he's got all the evidence there.
We're working on getting him back on the program, by the way.
Oh, that'd be great.
Good guess.
And to me, he's a hero. And so our concern is we have to deal with the brightness. But for the Anunnaki, it's the radiation. And gold, think about it. When you see spacecraft, satellites, how they have that gold foil on them. Another example is if you look at an F-16 fighter plane, there's that gold tint in the canopy because the pilot is very exposed in that aircraft. So they have to put gold, they actually embed gold into the plexiglass canopy. If they don't, the radiation will just cook the poor pilots. And so that's the reason why the Anunnaki need gold, and we go the aluminum route.
Is there going to be a whistleblower when it comes to Planet X?
Gosh, whistleblowers have very short lifespans these days.
Yeah, maybe.
They don't do well. There are whistleblowers. There are people that want...
On this subject?
Pardon?
On this topic?
Yeah, there are people that want to come forward. I'll be honest with you. I've had folks come forward to me. I get whistleblowers that reach out to me, and because these people, I have a reputation for discretion, but when I talk to them, I just say, don't do it. Don't go public. Don't do it. Because no one's going to appreciate your sacrifice. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your retirement. You're going to lose your family. You're going to go under a bridge. Mm-hmm. No one's going to care. So, when they do reach out to me, I listen to them. I feel, they need to be comforted. But, and I do that, and I feel honored that I can. But I never advise anyone that's whistleblowing, not with this government. I mean, think about Obama. No president in the history of the country persecuted whistleblowers worse than Obama.
Or tried to.
Yeah. He was pretty effective at it.
Let's go east of the Rockies. Rock Hill, South Carolina. That's got to be Barry. Barry, is that you?
It sure is, George, and I've got some good news real quick before I talk to Marshall. I'm not going to have any surgery on my shoulder.
Well, that is good news after falling weed whacking.
Yep, exactly. My collarbone was cracked, and they thought it was broken compound, but it wasn't.
And you missed our live event in Everett, Washington. I came out on stage and saw 2 empty seats, and I knew something was wrong with you.
Well, it was me, all right. And I tell you what, I was sick about it. I lost quite a fair amount of money with deposits and non-refundable plane tickets and train tickets for Amtrak. But hey, I'm going to be all right. What the heck? I'll come see you next time you're on the East Coast.
Wherever we go, that's true.
But anyway, for Marshall, I heard you say a few minutes ago that the Grand Canyon, you don't believe is from some massive flood that caused erosion to do it. Do you think that the Grand Canyon is very similar to the Great African Rift, where the continent is actually splitting apart?
Continental divide.
Huh? Yep.
Well,
plus the east side of the African Rift is moving east, and the west side is moving west. So the Earth is splitting apart. Does he think that the Grand Canyon could be similar?
Well, it could be. It could be crustal. There's a term I use called crustal undulation, and the crust of the planet is undulating. It's the reason why we're seeing tears, we're seeing splits, fault lines showing up in other places. We have the heating of the core of the planet that's increasing but irregular, and so that's manifesting in a lot of different ways in terms of the lithosphere. And when we go through the pole shift, wow, that's really going to be tough on the lithosphere. So it could be something, along the line of what you're talking about with the rift. But on the other hand, the Grand Canyon could also, it could be a solar sprite.
So the last time Nibiru apparently came through here was about 3,600 years ago, you're saying?
That's right. And according to the ancient Egyptians in the Qumran Bible, this happened during the Exodus, and they also it was Noah's flood. Now, Noah's flood in the Qumran, it's called the story of Sesuda and Hanok. There's over 150 flood stories in folklore and written history of cultures around the world. So this is a very well documented event, and there's the consistencies between them are really remarkable. So the basic difference between Noah's flood and Exodus was a best case scenario. Noah's flood was a worst case scenario. The reason why is location. When what will happen is Nemesis is arcing over around the sun, coming back down as it heads in the southern skies, and it passes through the plane of our solar system, ecliptic, and it's going to pass between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. And just go look at how many impact craters there are on Mars. I mean, you can see where that planet's really been pelted. And when it reaches that location, that's the point at where we would have a pole shift if we're on the same side of the sun when Nemesis reaches that point. Well, back in 2008, whistleblower Bob Dean, and I think he's a fine gentleman, and I respect him deeply. He's a whistleblower. He came right out and he read the secret documents, and when he was in the military, and he was a very high-ranking sergeant and had access to this stuff. And he said that we're going to be on the same side of the sun. So in other words, Nemesis is going to be in opposition. That's not good. We're passing between Nemesis and the sun, and then the days of darkness will happen because Nibiru is going to pass between us and Venus. And it's literally going to blot out the sun. It's going to be pitch black. So you have these tidal gravitational forces coming from Nibiru. Well, all of the objects in the Planet X system That's what's going to result in our pole shift.
And this Bob Dean, I think, is the same one who's been on our program before over the years. Wasn't he also a UFO whistleblower? Same guy?
Yeah, I believe so.
Might be.
And so Bob is, he was with, what was it, in Europe, the European Command. And then there was another gentleman, John Maynard, who actually helped me to start YOWZA. And he was in the military. What happens is you get these, tops, these command sergeants, and these are very high ranking. I mean, they got tons of rockers and stripes. They are the ones that work in the vaults. They have the keys to the kingdom, and when they're not dishing out stuff to the officers, they're reading it, and that's how these guys come across it.
Let's go to Gabriella, west of the Rockies on the Big Island in Hawaii. Hello, Gabriella. Welcome to the show.
Hello, George.
Hi.
It's actually, I would prefer to call it the island of Hawaii.
Well, you got it.
Mr. Masters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a member of a CERT team here that's Community Emergency Response Team, and it's under the Civil Defense and FEMA. I would like to know how is the state of Hawaii going to fare through all this, and what preparations can be possibly made?
Can you be that specific for us, Marshall? Heard all these little coqui frogs in the background. You hear them chirping?
And first off, I want to thank you for your service. I, too, am a CERT volunteer, trained and certified.
Ah, okay.
And I'm also an Aries. Hawaii is really... Your tsunamis are going to be the worst thing for you. Cascadia pops. They're also finding new zones. You have the volcanoes. There's any number of things. Which island in the archipelago do you live on?
She's on the Big Island.
You're on the Big Island. Well, between you and me, when it starts to get shaky, go flume the ditch.
What does that mean?
She knows what that means.
All right. Hope you can say that on radio. You're not tricking me, Marshall, are you?
Fluming the ditch is, there's a ditch that was dug by Japanese workers before World War II to irrigate the fields up the north end of the island.
Huh.
So when you go through it in boats, it's called fluming the ditch.
All right, I'm sure she'll know then what that is.
Yep. If I were on the Big Island, I'd go flume the ditch.
Now, what are the possibilities that nothing will happen?
Well, life is like a box of chocolates,
So said Forrest Gump.
Yep, you do, but you got to be prepared.
So there is a possibility that we may escape some of this.
To be, on one hand, I should say, anything's possible, but on the other hand, I'm looking at all the things that we projected that would be happening, and they're happening, and I'm seeing a progression, and I just see it coming. All
right, we're coming ourselves right back in a moment. We are back with Marshall Masters, our final segment as we talk about Nibiru, Planet X. Marshall, how did you get started into all of this? I mean, one doesn't just wake up being a CNN Science Features news producer and say, I'm going to deal with Planet X. What happened?
I was trying to figure out global warming. And
good luck.
Well, we did. And there was, interestingly enough, what we said was, well, if the sun is causing this, then anything with an atmosphere in our solar system is going to have the same trend as Earth, and that's exactly what we found, that the atmospheres in the other planets were heating up. Luminosity was a standard factor. And when Max Planck came out 4 years after us, they actually were looking more at the sun and the luminosity of the sun getting brighter. And, think about it now with the brightness of the sun, that we have more people dying in cars You know, parents will leave their kids in the car and go in shopping, come back
my God,
out.
yeah. There was just a case tonight of a little boy left in a van. I mean,
that's right.
It's crazy.
And so this is solar luminosity. I mean, I know that if I used to like to hang my, arm out the window when I'm driving along. I don't do that anymore because the sun really starts to irritate my skin. So it is getting brighter, and the solar luminosity, it's the whole reason for all the chemtrail spraying. That's the principal reason. There's other reasons, but that's what they're really trying to do between HAARP and the chemtrail spraying.
And in your opinion, the fact that we're not being told by officials, why? What are they afraid of?
Well,
talking about martial law and everything else, what are they afraid of?
Well, they're afraid of losing control. That's always what they want to have, is control. But why is it, I actually talk about this in one of my recent articles. And the whole thing about chemtrail spraying, it'll be in one of my next books.
Okay.
But, so this is kind of like a peek ahead. But the thing is that, why are they spraying now? I mean, you talk to a guy like Dane Wigington, and he's pulling his hair out. He's going, why are these crazy idiots doing this? They're destroying the biosphere of the planet, and they are. Why? Well, he looks at it, and he sees the immediate harm of what they're doing. But these people don't think in terms, they think in terms of centuries, all right? They play the long game. And now I understand what's really happening. What they're doing is, when the flyby of the Planet X system is over, they want to return to the surface where you have an atmosphere and a biosphere and an aquasphere that are able to restore themselves, that they are not past. They're not so, they don't come up to the surface and find a Venus or a Mars. So the reason why they're chemtrailing now, and they're killing 1 million people a year with chemtrailing, let's be blunt, and the aluminum is awful. By 2030, if things keep going the way they are now, half of all children are going to be born with autism. We have bees in the wild, colony collapse disorder. They're dropping dead. Now, not only in areas where it's man-made cultivation, but out in the boonies where there's no spraying, there's no cell phone towers, there's no nothing. It's the aluminum, because they're finding when they find these bees, they're finding that they have 50 times as much aluminum in their bodies as it takes to give an adult Alzheimer's. So the bees are essentially, they're so loaded up with aluminum, they go out to look for nectar, and they forget to get the nectar, and they forget where the hive is, and then the hive collapses. So this is really going on. So why are they doing it now? They're doing it now because what they want is a world that can renew itself when they come back up to the surface from their deep underground bunkers, like Philip Schneider documented so well. And then they've got a world that can restore itself. So they're not, to them, the biosphere is going to collapse one way or the other, whether they do it or the Planet X flyby does it, but the biosphere is going to collapse. All they're doing right now is hedging their bet so that when they come up to the surface to take control of the planet again, that they've got a planet to control that can still heal itself. And that's what they're doing. So for everybody else in between here to there, we're just collateral damage.
All right, let's go to the phones now. As promised, Aaron in South Dakota is with us on the wild card line. Hi, Aaron.
Hi.
Good to have you with us. Go ahead.
Thanks for the call. I want to let you guys know about all this. It has to do with the stars and the sun and Nibiru and all that. It's dimensions dimensional. It has to do with God and the devil and void, movement, light, firmament, all that stuff. It's all one.
Well, what do you mean by the devil? What's the devil got to do with this?
Positive and negative. There's always positive and negative. The one destroying us from the underworld, who's just said it.
Well, Marshall, you're a believer in God. So am I.
Well, actually, what I see is that humanity is coming. Think about the Hopi prophecy, Rock. What does it tell us? We're coming to a fork in the road. If we keep going the way we're going, not going to work well. If we take the high road, we're going to have a good future. And there are dark entities that are dealing with us on multiple planes of existence, and they're feeding off of our life force energy. If we evolve as a species, we become, this is an existential threat for these dark forces because we are their food source. If the food source evolves, becomes aware, and is beyond their reach, they go hungry. So there is very much a battle of good and evil going on here. Yes.
Next up, let's go to Neil in Jacksonville, Florida. Hello, Neil. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you very much for taking my call.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Both of you. I'd like to make a real quick statement and then a very quick question.
All right.
George, you had a guest on a couple of nights ago that was talking about something I'm very concerned with as well, which is an EMP exploding somewhere over the United States and bringing the grid down. The Planet X scenario would cause the same thing to happen.
That's correct.
And what concerns me is that no one seems to be talking about, with all the conversations about all these scenarios about the grid going down, no one seems to be talking about or concerned about the main problem when all that happens, or if it should happen, is that there are hundreds and hundreds of nuclear power plants all over the United States, mostly on the coastlines, also in and on and near earthquake zones. So in terms of, saving up guns and bullets and food and there being safe places to be, the elite going into their underground bases and coming back up in a couple of 100 years, when those nuclear power plants begin to melt down and there's no power grid to control the rods, it will be Fukushima times a million.
Yep.
So
a disaster.
There will not be any safe places in the United States or probably in the world for them to come back up to. What they would come back up to would be a 25,000-year irradiated surface where nothing would grow, nothing would live. So it does them no good to hide. And I'm just wondering why that's the one scenario, why, whether we're talking about an EMP or an event like, the kill shot, why no one is talking about why there will be no safe place to go. No amount of all of the bullets and rifles you can have will be irradiated, and all the food will be useless. So that's my statement. My question is, why is no one? Is it so frightening that everyone is afraid to talk about? Because that to me, the nuclear power plants melting down all over the United States and the world is the most frightening and deadly scenario I can think of. So my question is, what do you think about that? And I'll take my answer off of here.
Okay, well, William Forstchen and F. Michael Maloof, who have both written books about EMPs and X-flares, have talked about the possibilities of these nuke power plants going down, and that the generators would only last just several hours, a day maybe, and after that, we're cooked.
Yes, this is a real problem. What I would tell your listeners, there's a couple of guys that you could follow. One's Arnie Gunderson. He's a hero. This guy's been following Fukushima, and wow, you really want to get you want to get onto Arnie's site. I think it's Southwind Energy, something like that.
Okay.
There's a great article that was written perhaps you remember his name, is the guy that wrote When Technology Fails.
Yes.
And he wrote about this several years ago. Your caller is spot on. I mean, this is one of the things when I'm doing relocation analysis and consulting for people, and I mentioned this in my Two Sons in the Sky, Who Lives, Who Dies video series. What I tell people is that you need to find out where these plants are, and also weapons facilities and any kind of nuclear facility. And you need to find the prevailing wind patterns. My basic recommendation is that you're no less than 50 miles upwind and no less than 100 miles down.
And you're still cooked. And Matthew Stein was the author of When Technology Fails. He was just on with me about a month ago.
Yes, that's right. Matthew wrote a brilliant article on it, and so you still may be able to find that. And but your caller is absolutely right. When the grid goes down, they think, well, you scram the reactors. But you got to keep the water flowing.
It's got to be cooled. That's right. Absolutely.
To cool off these piles. And so we're going to have just a whole bunch of Fukushimas popping off all around the country. And it's insane. I mean, General Electric designed a safe reactor type, sodium reactors, back in the 50s. And instead of building those, sodium reactors, if you take and pull the power on it, the reactor just goes cold, shuts down, boom, that's it. And, you don't have this problem. But our government wanted these tea kettles because, frankly, they want to be able to create fissionable nuclear fuel, so for bombs. And, they have set us up to fail in the worst possible way. Not only do I see a terrible threat, George, from all of these tea kettle reactors, but fracking fields as well. I mean, fracking is just absolutely horrific because, they're pumping this witch's brew of stuff into the ground. These well casings are designed to last 30 years in normal circumstances. Some fail on the first day of operation. You start having major quakes, that are these, we start seeing magnitude 9, magnitude 10 quakes. You're going to feel those all across the country. These well casings are going to fail everywhere. I feel sorry for the people, particularly in Pennsylvania, where it's really dense, and in the other states where you have all of this heavy fracking going on, because it's going to turn entire areas of the country that would pre-fracking, before fracking, would have been highly survivable places for survival communities to, plant the flag and make life.
Give us some projected dates, Marshall, on when you think Planet X is going to start having an effect on us.
I think that we're going to have visibility on it, and then probably about 6 to 12 months afterwards, things are going to start. It's just going to start getting progressively worse. We're going to see impacts. We're going to have solar events. We're going to have a lot more weather weirding. So this is something where it's just going to build up in stages. And then once Nemesis reaches perihelion, its closest point to the sun, that's when things are really going to get terrible.
Just what we need. Marshall, thanks again for being on the program. Do keep in touch with us.